Hi everyone. Today we are meeting with two of our friends who both have identified as libertarians. We'll see if that's still true in the video. But we talked with them about their thoughts on the election, and yeah, here it goes. On the first day of voting,
my country sent to me a pandemic and a quarantine. On the second day of voting,
my country sent to me
police brutality, a pandemic and a quarantine.
On the third day of voting,
my country sent to me
a check of $1,200,
police brutality, a pandemic and a quarantine.
Well, welcome both of you to the Left Show. So the reason we chose to put you both in a video together is because you both, I don't know if this is still true, but at some point when we knew you, identified as being libertarian. So I'm just curious if you both still identify as libertarians, and if so, why, and if not, what's changed. So I think we could start with Scott and then maybe go to Milen.
Okay. So yeah, I thought about this because Johnny reached out to me and wanted my views on libertarianism. And he asked me if I still feel that way. And like, I'm not nearly as like politically or like civically engaged as I am, but I do definitely have a lot of thoughts on it, right? And my problem is that like just on a philosophical level, I think that in the United States, we live with this, and a lot of other places too. I think we live with like this illusion of choice. I think that some are born with more choices than others, but like ultimately the vast majority of people don't really have like a lot of agency, and therefore are like limited from exploiting their fullest potential. And I think our government was at one point born with this idea of like anti-tyranny and like freedom of choice and freedom of religion, whatever, but I think that it's like since evolved to this oligarchy of very powerful individuals that enforce the status quo and enforce private property and aren't really always looking out for the welfare necessarily of like the mass majority of people. And I think that a big reason this is because we're very disconnected from each other and like disconnected from reality. And we have this like culture machine of like media, which doesn't just include the news, but like TV, movies, whatever kind of thing has like a narrative. Like we're all kind of like pre-programmed, I think, to like be brainwashed to believe that we have this illusion of choice, like, and that this entire system that surrounds us is working good, and that you just have to pick like red or blue. And like that's how they keep us kind of in this like they keep us against each other. Half the country's always pissed off at the other side, and we're not really looking at like, oh, like maybe we should restructure the way we're doing this instead of just fighting with each other. But of course, that's kind of the goal of the people who have created the system and are enforcing it, right? So I think you have to become like, I think you have to be a psychopath to be a politician. I think like really like you have like, and it's not good people generally that are becoming politicians. Like, you know what I mean? Like, and I think that is just kind of like, that is exemplary of like how messed up I think the institution is. And I guess you need like strong people like with like strong willpowers and like good like masters of persuasion and stuff. That's why these people end up becoming politicians, because they are influential. But a lot of people, like I think you see like this election, you have like, in the Democratic side, you have Joe Biden, who I don't think is like the most competent person or like the most persuasive guy. And I feel like he got to that position maybe because he has a lot of influence, he has a lot of connections. He was like VP before. But I just think that it's like, I don't think that we have really this choice or this freedom to become like a politician without being pre-programmed and being a part of this group.
And I want to get Milen's take on libertarian.
Of course, yeah. I'm getting way ahead of myself.
No worries.
Go ahead.
Yeah, man, you're making me nervous. We'll see who can get the most speaking time in. But yeah, my political journey has been very interesting. I definitely started as more of a hardcore conservative. That's just kind of like the background I was raised in. Then later on, I kept some of the beliefs on the more of the economic side, fiscal responsibility. I'm like, we can't just tax our way and spend into prosperity. The inflation's going to kill us. But it's funny when the Republican Party is only preaching fiscal responsibility when they're in the minority party. Now they're running up the debt because they don't want to be outdone by, Obama or Clinton or whatever. It's like a big contest to them. They don't care. And it wasn't that I was so much against taxation because I didn't want to pay to enjoy the services out there. I wasn't going to go be a hermit. I just saw what a lot of my tax money was going to. And I'm like, I don't feel like I want to consent to the largest military budget in the history of the world, how local cities get most of the police funding, and we're not even getting like good results. I don't know if you guys have gone down Harbor Drive in San Diego, but there's these nasty potholes. And you're thinking like, this leads to the heart of the city. Mayor Faulkner, you know, you might as well want to fix it because, you know, what are you spending our money on? And yeah, I just wish we had more of a voice in how we get to spend that money, how we can reinvest and make it into a better society, and maybe make some cuts, make some savings. But it seems like both parties are controlled by people at the top. And it's like in gambling, you know, you play both sides to always come out on top. And, you know, Democrats like to pretend that they're more for the people, but you look at their voting record and it's like, okay, well, you guys approved the military budget and spending and stimulus and this and that. What was it, $5 trillion this time around to bail out the companies? It's like, okay, if that's not socialism, I don't know what the hell is, pardon my French. But if it's already here, we might as well benefit from it too, because I'm getting sick and tired of pretending that the American dream is still a thing. I call it the globalist nightmare now. Upward mobility is kind of a joke, and it's almost like they meant to keep you in this rat race so you can keep being productive, keep paying taxes, keep consuming, and yeah, the illusion of choice. You know, you can make it if you want, but then again, some people have access to small loans of $1 million. Other people will never dream of making that money in their lifetime. So when you look at it through that lens, you can kind of see, yeah, it's not what it's meant out to be. And the U.S. has been involved in some dark, shady stuff in the past. People don't want to come to terms with it.
Mm-hmm. And I think we both agree with, I think, pretty much everything you guys are saying. And so there's a lot of common ground between people who think, I think, independently and not just strictly red or blue. And I wanted to question you guys about the electoral process and what choice you guys are making in that. I know there's Joe Jorgensen, I think that's how you say your name. But are you guys choosing to vote for the Libertarian candidate, or are you doing something else? What's going on?
I'll go first. Sure. Yeah, I voted for the Libertarian candidates merely not because I think that they have any chance of winning, but just because it's more like I live in Oregon, so it's like no matter what, I think it's going to go blue for whatever positions you're selecting. But I just like the idea of having a candidate and a party that's not that. I mean, first of all, aligns with my values, but is also a third party candidate, it's a third choice. And people say you're throwing away your vote when you vote for like a libertarian candidate. And I think that is the problem. I think that is sort of why I'm voting for that person. It's like a protest vote.
Yeah. What about you?
So I've never actually voted for the LP up until this time. In 2012, I was on the Romney train. Then in 2016, I was kind of upset that Rand Paul didn't make it further, so I wrote him in for the GOP primary and the general. And now I'm kind of disappointed with him because I don't know. He's getting more in line. He's not like his dad, but I mean, hey, you know, that's what politicians do. They get you excited until they disappoint you. And this time around, I did it more for a pragmatic reason, just to get I voted for Joe Jorgensen. Ballot's right here. All I gotta do is mail it in, but I wouldn't be so sad if, you know, it wouldn't be the end of the world for me if I forgot. But don't worry, I'll get it in. The thing is, I wanted them to get maybe over 5%. It's looking less likely this time around, but maybe if the Greens and the LP can collectively get over 5% and maybe form some kind of coalition one day in the future, like you said, the third party kind of candidates, the ones that tend to lean more on the libertarian side, whether you're left or right. I mean, at least we have that in common, and we can't keep pretending that the parties at the top represent our interest anymore. I mean, every now and then you get like, you know, an AOC or a Justin Amash, but for like every one of them, how many normie Democrats or Republicans? And, you know, it's not that we're outnumbered, we're just out organized. And they've been doing a damn good job at it, keeping what's best in line for them. So hopefully enough people will get around it and not feel the need to vote or shame. Oh, we'll vote for third parties, or vote for Trump or Biden, whatever side you're on. It's like, why don't you excite us with a better candidate? You know, I would have probably voted for Bernie if he was the nominee, but they did it again. And I'm like, wow, this is 2016, but worse. And yeah, I don't think anyone owes their support to any major party. They have to come out and earn it every single time.
Yeah. I wanted to ask real quick, what did you have a question?
You can go.
I wanted to ask real quick, because Scott, you mentioned the Peace Corps, and I wanted to ask you, how did that affect your experiences, your perspective on things?
Yeah, so I think Milen talked about he's like this globalist nightmare. thing, and I feel like the Peace Corps' objective is like to sort of like, we know we're moving towards this more like globalized world, a more like connected world, which I think is generally a good thing, but it's not good like when we're not cooperating with one another, which is why I think that there's a lot of like problems with trade wars and stuff, but whatever. So like when I was in the Peace Corps, like I went into it because I felt like, okay, their mission or their objective is to go towards other countries and to promote peace and friendship, sort of like this anti-imperialism, this like bonding with like cooperation and friendship and stuff. And I was like, that's really cool. I think that's a cool objective to have, because we are moving towards a more globalized world, whether you like it or not. And I think that we have to learn to work together, or otherwise there'll be chaos, you know? So anyways, when I did, I think it was like a great avenue to become exposed to like that kind of world, like working abroad. There's like, that comes in a lot of different ways, but I think that what upsetted me about the Peace Corps is like, it works like any other government organization. It's very bureaucratic. And like, there's this word I really like that this philosopher came up with named Sartre. It's called bad faith. And it's like when people are acting basically disingenuously. Like it's like his example he uses, like when you're at a restaurant and there's like a waiter who comes up to you and acts like, hey fellas, it's like that guy doesn't talk to his family like that, he doesn't talk to his friends like that. That's just like a role he's playing. And I feel like when you're in politics a lot of times, you have this like great goal or objective in mind, and then you end up becoming exposed to like all this other stuff, and you kind of like lose the path of what you're trying to do. And not that I'm being like too arrogant or whatever, like I could do better myself, but like I think that private industry, the reason why I'm a libertarian is I think private individuals can make really big changes and often do. And I think that we don't necessarily have to centralize power and centralize authority with one figure in order to accomplish that. I think it's actually much better, much more effective if we can just learn to cooperate, and private individuals can have nonprofits. Like you can have these billionaires and millionaires, people become very successful and do good things for their community. And you could just see that like on a bigger scale. And that's what I think is like what a utopia would look like, if that we could find a way to like be more connected, align our values with things that are positive, not like, and you don't have to go and do things, just it could be in your own community, you know? So that's kind of how it affected me. I eventually wanted to just stay down there and work privately at schools and stuff, but COVID-19 eventually sent everyone back, and I came back as well. Yeah,
and
spooky.
Oh, do you want to ask more about that?
Yeah.
Okay, well, you brought up COVID-19, and Milen, I know we were talking to you on the phone last night just about, you know, your experience with COVID-19, and I wanted to see if you wanted to talk about like what your experience has been and if it's shaped you or shaped your political opinions in any way.
Yeah, so let's see. I was working part-time with this one buddy of mine at his restaurant, and in the beginning, people weren't sure what was happening. They're like, oh, is this going to be a thing? Is it a hoax? And then eventually saw all the mandates, and we were wearing masks and doing all the precautions. But even that, you know, we like lost some profit margins, some revenue. I saw it at first in the beginning, you know, prices were going up. He was getting more and more stressed because he had like a big family to, you know, house and feed and all that. And I can only imagine what he was going through. It was like 6 years done. Then in August, like, yeah, man, we got to get rid of our delivery staff. So I was like, all right, unemployment will be fun employment, even though I didn't qualify for stimulus nor the CARES Act. I did a 1099 last time, and we had put in before. It's a long, complicated story, but I mean, you know, I've been okay because I'm staying here with my family and I don't got to worry about rent at least. Then again, I can't really do much else because of limited options, what's open, what's not. Plus, you know, you got to save money and be frugal, and that's definitely not going to stimulate the economy. So it made it seem like, yeah, ideally libertarianism before made a lot more sense to me because it was like you're arguing ideology, but now, you know, it's hit the fan and you're like, well, what are we going to do? People are dying, and people are acting under a lot of pressure, a lot of, you know, bureaucracy going on. They're trying to cut through some of that to get the vaccine faster. But then even now you have people like on that QAnon site saying, oh yeah, well, what if there's like a microchip and they're going to trace us? I'm like, bro, you have an iPhone, you have a 2020 car with a GPS system. Like if you really, that was the concern, you'd be off the grid. But just all this hypocrisy, and other people, I feel like they're arguing their ideologies too. You're seeing the most extreme nastiness coming out of it. And I mean, I don't know, like I'm getting worried that the tensions are building up, and a lot of the protests during the summer were, of course, because of the racial violence going on and police brutality and all that. But then also think about leading up to that, people were just pent up, they're ready to burn it down, and you can't blame them because people are probably going through a lot worse than what someone like me and I guess middle class would be going to. But that's shrinking, and you're seeing a lot more evictions, and it's like maybe someone has to step in and do something. It's one of those crazy times. It's definitely not peace times. It's biological warfare, if you will, and we got to fix that.
Almost feels like a civil war is also bubbling. It feels like it at
I mean,
least.
here in the burbs, it's okay, but you go to the inner cities and some of the major metros, and you're like, oh man, like this is, it's heating up.
Well, I also wanted to ask Scott, and of course you're libertarians, but it's interesting how you think like the private industry should be the one to step in. And I think in a way that was sort of the ideology of Donald Trump for running for president. But at the same time, he's not taking a lot of donations from Wall Street. Joe Biden's actually the one who takes more private donations, which it seems like in terms of like a libertarian ideology, is government supposed to be that intertwined with private industry, like the public and private sectors? Is that how things should be working?
Look, I just think in general, Donald Trump's a bad leader. I just think like stuff he does, like I think that he's divisive and he like she's a loser. He's like being like a good leader, like as part of like you're a captain on a team. Imagine like someone's like struggling and you're just pointing at them and you're like, look at that loser. Like, you know what I mean? Like who does that? Like I just think it's like kind of poor leadership. And I think like that is why he's so successful. And like I think that his success really thrives on that. And that's why it's so toxic and why I don't like the way government works. Just that being said, do I think like government and politicians, government and business should be intertwined? Yeah, I think that they should share a relationship because I think that they have a lot of common goals. But like the thing is like I don't know if I'm right. I'm not that smart. Like I'm not that engaged with like I don't know all the politicians' names and all that kind of stuff. I'm kind of like a big thinker. I just think that I think that it could work if politicians and business people just cooperate with one another better. I think that's just easier said than done. Like I said, I'm not the guy who's gonna say how to do it, but I don't think I'm wrong either with a lot of stuff that I think,
Yeah.
So I don't really have a specific like remedy or like it's too much this or too much that. I'm just kind of like observing what I'm saying. You know what I mean?
Yeah. A little bit off topic, but has anyone ever told you that your voice is like the guy from Midnight Gospel? Have you seen that?
I've never seen it. My neighbor next door told me about it though. He recommended it to me to watch it. He said I liked it.
Because I know you like Rick and Morty, and it's not exactly the same.
I love Rick and Morty.
Pretty trippy.
It's kind of the same vibe, right?
Yeah. If you guys like to get high and like watch it, that's definitely something to watch.
I'd love to get high, dude. I can't wait for shrooms to become legal in Oregon. I think that would honestly solve this like issue with disconnection that we have with one another. I don't know if you guys are really into psychedelics or anything, but if you ever want to like have a great time with your buddies, just go out to Joshua Tree and take some LSD, and like you'll know, like you'll like experience like genuinely what matters. Like your ego kind of falls away and you realize that you have this identity that you've built up over a number of years out of like some like weird defense mechanism. But then like you really just kind of think about it and you're like, man, like this sounds like super hippie and whatever, but really all that matters is like love and like genuine friendship with other people and shit. Like that is like all that really, and like when you like strip it all down in a way and everything, like that to me is just like all that really matters. And I think that we get lost in like the mechanics of it all. And I think it's just like, as long as we just keep that as like our value, like our goal in mind, to me is what's important.
That's really Midnight Gospel. But I agree, but I do agree with you. I think that's why we do this show and just try to talk with people and just hear their perspectives without being like, like debatey or like trying to fight or whatever, because like we all have our differences, but it's good to just come together. I wanted to ask Milen, is there anything you wanted to add in terms of just your thoughts on the current situation and I guess your evolving beliefs as you described before?
I feel like well, going back to what Scott said for the business and government, that typically, I mean, for the most part, I still prefer private enterprise just because I've had much better times with them. But people also got to realize, even from the libertarian or economic right persuasion, that big business can get just as bad as big government. The only difference I would say is you can vote with your wallet every day, but just because I don't shop at Walmart's doesn't mean that they're going to go out of business. And, you know, they've just established themselves to be that big. I prefer everything to be more decentralized, including the banks too. None of that too big to fail stuff. I mean, if you listen to Peter Schiff, he would say how back in the day, banks would actually compete for your money and they would give out better loans and make better decisions. Now, when they know they're going to get bailed out, you know, they're being very reckless with it. And we saw it in the housing crash. We're seeing it now. So you're starting to wonder, is this because there hasn't been enough government involvement in the private sector, or because there's been too much involvement of the private sector in the governments? And you're seeing a few individuals at the very top taking off with not just wealth, but resources to where like it's not sustainable. And I mean, I've never been like that big hippie environmentalist. I have no problem with green energy. I was hoping it would kind of get pushed through the private sector. And you know, not through government subsidies and all that. But at the same time, you're thinking, okay, we're subsidizing oil. So like I said, you know, you see all this hypocrisy and you're like, wait a minute, like, are these left views, right views? And you realize that doesn't matter when you're at the top. They're doing it for themselves and they don't really care about us. And it sucks because you want to believe, but I just want the people to organize, mobilize, and, you know, work out the kinks later. But I feel like it's not working for us. And, you know, we're the majority of the people here taking up most of the lands, most of, you know, jobs and resources. It just, I don't think it could keep going on this way.
Do you want to respond to that, Scott?
Yeah, no, man, I think that we are like for sure accelerating our demise. Like I saw some, like I was reading something that by like 2050, enough of the Arctic is going to be melted to where the point where there's going to be like not enough snow and it'll all be like this black or like darker earth underneath it that's going to at a certain point accelerate global warming at a point past like which we can't really do much about it. And so it's like that's happening, right? And it's like, so that's why to me, like I'm such a big picture person, because like once that happens, it's like what really matters? Does anything really matter? You know what I mean? Like we can sit here and like debate all day, but like if that happens, like then what do we do? Like, you know, what are we gonna move to Mars or live underground in tunnels? And we have to, nothing matters at that point anymore. You know what I mean? So it's like, I think that it's kind of hypocritical for me to be like, oh, like, you know, I am like libertarian, whatever. That's why I don't like necessarily fully consider myself like libertarian, because I think that you need some sort of order or structure. Somebody needs to step in and like and do something about environmental issues. Just nobody's doing it. And like I said, dude, I don't have the answers, but it's just like at the rate it's currently being treated and handled, it's being very, I mean, mismanaged, obviously, right? And I think a lot of that comes down to innovation. I think that the solution to that is innovation. And the issue I have with like very, how do you say, like progressive or liberal ideology or democratic ideology is that it comes down to like, let's tax those at the very top. And then we could use that money for the government to do good things. First of all, I don't necessarily think that everyone in the government is doing good things with your money. Second of all, I think that when you tax people who are really wealthy, they're like these billionaires, you are in some way disincentivizing these people who like might get to that tax bracket. Let's say it's like 400,000 or whatever that Biden puts it at, right? And if like you are making like 75 or 30, you're gonna be like, you know what? I'm just gonna kick it right here. Actually, I don't want to make any more money, you know? And then it's like you're not being as innovative. You're not creating this new technology that could like, I don't know, suck toxins out of the ozone or whatever thing is that I can't even appreciate because it doesn't exist yet. But I think if anyone's going to create that stuff, who always has throughout history, it's not the government, dude. It's private individuals. What the government does is they back them up with patents and stuff. And that's one of the great things about America and why so many people have come to live here throughout history is because that if you're very smart and you create something, you come to US, they're going to protect you. You're going to be protected. And you can make money off your really amazing invention, you know? So that is the one thing I really, that I think is a characteristic of mine that's like libertarian, is this idea that through technological innovation, we could make the world better, but if also incentivized in like the wrong way, I think it could also lead to our destruction. So it just depends on like what we focus on. We could be like, yeah, we could do all this technology leading into like warfare, or we could do into like health and science and whatever, increasing our longevity. And I think that just comes down to being more connected with one another. I don't think phones are helping. I think that like spending too much time on the internet and stuff is messing people up and giving people a bunch of anxiety, and like TV and internet, whatever. I think that people need to get out there and do some shrooms in the forest or something. I'm just kidding. But like, you know, like for real, like, I think that that's really important to like feel connected to nature. So I'm a big environmentalist kind of guy.
Yeah, I've actually been I actually give Natalie my phone every day, like throughout the day, and I tell her, go hide it. I don't want to see it until
Yeah, that's good. Yeah.
So I'm trying to like wean myself off of that as well. But I wanted to ask
Right.
any sort of closing just statements or thoughts. I know we've shared a lot. Milen, do you want to start off if you have any last thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I get why people could be concerned about Biden's tax plan, but when I hear the people on the progressive left talking about taxing like the top 0.1%, we're talking like $200 billion. And a lot of people don't have like the capacity to grasp how big that is, or they just never, thought about it. It's just, oh, it's a couple more zeros or a B instead of an M. We're talking like exponents, it's a substantial amount of wealth. And my thing is, you should be able to make as much money as legally and ethically as you can. If that's your only purpose in life, though, you're missing out. But then it kind of gets back to the ethical question. Who are we as a society and the people? Like, are we really going to get this one man get super rich on the backs of his workers? And it almost seems like a modern day slavery. And that's not very libertarian to me. So like I said, a lot of these views have been like intertwining and twisting and thinking back historically what's happened. Like Bernie Sanders, for example, I don't want to bring in, one single politician, but people are saying, oh, he's super radical. And you look back to what he's saying, and it's been done before. There used to be a middle class. And I mean, if it had, I don't mean to, give Elizabeth Warren credit here, but she has a point when, credit where it's due. That if the minimum wage had kept with productivity, it should have been like 20 some dollars. I mean, the dollar's just getting deflated. We're borrowing, we're printing, and it's like, what's it going for? I don't see it helping the people, the government, if it does exist, that's what it should be, to protect the people and help them out in that case. And I mean, yeah, it's wild. We're no longer really debating ideology. We're trying to be practical, like how are we going to stop the spread and get people back to work and make sure people don't end up on the streets. It's
Did you want to
real.
final thoughts, Scott?
If you want to create change, it starts with yourself. Leave it with that.
Yeah, it is true. We all agree with that. I think we definitely agree on the problems, of course. How could we not? There's the solutions. There's so many solutions. Even like people within our own ideology or group or whatever have different solutions. So I know we could go on all day, but we really appreciate you two coming on. You both are extremely articulate. I feel like you two should run for something. Honestly, I'd rather have you guys, a ton of these politicians. So, but the last thing is, and we always ask people this, where can people find you if you want people to find you? Where can people find you? Go ahead, Scott.
Sure. You could find me on Instagram. That's pretty much the only thing I use. Scott_Lucero, Lucero, Spanish.
Sweet. And Milen?
I mean, I'm not really that active on social media, but if you want to stop by Instagram at Chakiaman93, CHAKI 93, AKIA 93, yeah. So swing on by, but I don't expect a whole lot. I mean, I mostly just lurk on Reddit and 4chan and read the stuff and talk about it to people.
Awesome.
I don't post too many things because eventually they can come back to bite you when we do run for something. So we'll keep it mysterious, keep it ambiguous.
All right, we appreciate you guys for coming on. Take care. Have a great day.
Thank you, Johnny. I really appreciate you having me on. This was my first podcast, and it was really exciting. I like to be able to talk into the void and like get my stuff out there. So like when I die, people can look back at the ramblings of like a misunderstood genius and have like some sort of legacy that I didn't just leave behind with my death. So thank you guys. I really appreciate y'all.
I love it. We love it.
I think none of it's going to matter in the end, but it's good we get it now for the record for the archive. If they do find us, study us.
Exactly. Yeah. Some aliens will find me and be like, this guy's pretty cool. I hope.
All right, you guys are awesome.
It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
See you.
All right, bye, y'all. Thanks for having me.
On the first day of voting,
My country sent to me a pandemic and a quarantine.